Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Leftovers. Leftovers, if you've listened to the podcast, you know this is an ongoing segment where we look at games where we really haven't played them in quite a while. Maybe we've played them once or twice. Maybe we used to play them a lot, but for whatever reason, the game has been pushed to the back of the game shelf and has become a leftover. So we don't spend a lot of time delving into like the playthroughs or the tutorials or the rules of the game. We just want to give you a high level look at why we enjoyed the game, why we want to get it back to the table, and maybe how it's different than its competitors out there. So I'm going to talk about a game. Graham is going to talk about a game. Graham, do you want to go first? How do you want to do it?
No, you can go first. But I mean
All right.
that's the way I have the images set up. Is you go first.
Okay, good enough. Then I won't change it. All right, my leftover for this episode is a game that it's a social deduction game. It's one that I don't know how many people played it when it first came out, let alone are still playing it today. But it's a game called Mayday Mayday. This game came out in 2013. It's put out by a European company, Siwali. I think that's how you pronounce it, Cwali, and it is a social deduction game that is all about um, possibly taking over an airliner and doing something bad to it. Doesn't really say what you're going to do, but the premise to it is that the pilot has become incapacitated. Whether it's sick or poisoned or murdered, you don't really know because they're inside the locked cockpit. And so the flight crew has to determine who is going to take over the plane, or is it going to be the good guys or the bad guys? And of course, this is all done secretively. You're each dealt three cards at the beginning of the game. Two of them might say you're loyal. One of them may say that you're an infiltrator or whatever. But whatever the cards are, whichever one you have two of is what's going to determine your role. And then you're going to place these cards down randomly in front of you, so you're not going to know which cards of yours are in what order in front of you. And then throughout the game, people are going to be able to look at one card and they're going to be able to mark it as they're an infiltrator or they're a good person. So you don't really know if they're lying or not. You just know that you have two of one and one of another. Eventually, you'll be able to kind of whittle it down and figure out who's lying or not. It's much like other social deduction games. The infiltrators are going to know who each other is at the beginning of the game, and they're going to try to work together to get enough positive votes to be able to take over the plane. You're going to cast your votes, whether you think the person's reliable or not, and then hopefully that person gets voted to be able to go into the cockpit. And if you're an infiltrator, obviously you want them to be on your team, and if you're a loyal person, you want to be on your own team. It's a straight up social deduction game. There's voting in it. There's lying. There's bluffing, obviously. The twist is that, yes, you're randomly looking at cards and you are either telling the truth or you're lying about them. If you are a good person, you have to tell the truth. If you're an infiltrator, you can either tell the truth or lie. I mean, the only difference really between like a resistance that you're not going out on missions per se and trying to fail them. You are just trying to, over the course of the game, I forget how many rounds there are. You're just trying to get enough votes to where you are voted reliable, and then your team can take over the cockpit. I only played it once. I played it. It's been 2015 since I played it, so it's been 5 years. I played it at a convention. It was a fun time, but it's going to be like every other social deduction game. It's going to be very um, reliant upon the group that you're playing it with. And if you have a good group and they get into the bluffing and the lying and the accusations or whatever, makes for a better game. Some would argue that it doesn't, but that is the style of game that it is. And I'll tell you an interesting side story. Well, one of the reasons I want to get it back, it's been a long time since I played. I did play it at a con, and I did play with a good group of people. So I want to see maybe if it holds up, or maybe if it's as good as I remember it being. I don't know if it will be or not. Social deduction games tend to have a shelf life with them, but interesting side story on this is a game that kind of prompted me to do one of the videos I did when I was doing videos for Board Game Breakfast on the Dice Tower, and I did a video that was based upon um, I guess, political correctness. And I talked about the game New Bedford, and New Bedford was getting kind of ripped apart a little bit because it was about going out and whale hunting, and people were saying how wrong that was and how bad it was. And this game, I'm like, okay, well, it's very subjective because for one person, whale hunting is the worst, but this is a game about actually taking over an airline. And whether you're a terrorist, whatever you want to call yourself, infiltrator, same difference. But yet, this game is perfectly acceptable, apparently. And when I did the video, I kind of made a joke about New Bedford saying, okay, well, what is political correctness? Blah blah blah. Check out my new expansion for New Bedford, the Baby Seal Gone Clubbing expansion. And needless to say, I got a little bit of backlash on that one. I thought it was humorous myself, but I think that episode or that segment led to me getting interviewed for I don't know, one of the game magazines, Casual Gamer was one of them or whatever. They did an article or whatever. But anyways, back to the game. Mayday, Mayday, Sea Wally, ranked 5,510, 5 to 8 players, I think, and yeah, probably about a half hour playing time. No more than 45 minutes. I'd say 30 minutes will probably get you home. So that is my leftover Mayday, Mayday.
So I've never played Mayday Mayday, but just from what you're describing for the playthrough, it really reminds me of the game Good Cop Bad Cop. When you dealt 3 cards, and depending on which one you have the majority is what you have. I do like the description of the game of Mayday Mayday, that the pilot has died via poisoning or something like that, isn't it? And you as the crew members have to decide who's going to take over the plane.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like social deduction games, so I'll be interested to try this one, but they can be, as you rightly point out, they can be very group dependent. If you don't get the right group of people, then the games like this just don't work.
Yeah, and this one, like I said, it's been a long time, but I don't remember doing anything super special that's going to really differentiate it a lot from like the Resistance and games like that. It's a different theme, but at the end of the day, it's still bluffing and voting and trying to deduce who's on your, well, not necessarily who's on your team, because the infiltrators are always going to know, but if you're the good person, trying to deduce who the bad person is.
Okay, so my leftover is, it was funny because when Dean and I were first talking about what games we're going to be doing, we were trying to figure out, well, Dean was trying to figure out when the last time he played Mayday Mayday was. So we were kind of going through, it was before the first time you went to Grand Con, blah, blah, blah. My game is, I could pinpoint the week of the month of the year that the last time I played this game. So this is a game called In the Name of Odin. It came out in 2016, and I can tell you the last time I played it was the last week of May of 2017. Because we did this as the Four Corners of the Board. This is one of our in-depth reviews. And normally we played the game a bunch of times, and because that Four Corners of the Board came out on beginning of June, we must have played it the last week of May. So In the Name of the Odin kind of came out at the same time when a bunch of other Viking games came out. And it is a Viking game. 2 to 5 players, plays in about 45 minutes to an hour, so it is relatively short. And the game board is set up to, it's like an old worldly map. But there's different sections on the map. One is heroes that you can get. One are raids that you can go on. And one is buildings that you can build and boats you can buy. And you have cards in your hand, and you're going to be playing the cards to get resources, to get, you want to get the Vikings into your town. Because if you want to go on a raid, the raids will say you need 3 merchants, 2 warriors, and I forget what the green ones, the blue ones were. There's 3 different classes of Vikings, and each raid will tell you what's the minimum you need to go. You also need a boat, because the further you go away, the bigger the boat that you need to go across the larger sea. So you need to go buy boats. You have a basic town to start, and you can buy building cards to add to that to give you more capabilities, maybe to hold more people in your town, or to give you bonuses, or to make things cheaper. Like you have a boat builder, so you can now buy cheaper boats. Then you have heroes across the top of the board, which will give you a bonus when you go raiding with them. They also give you usually a pretty powerful special ability. But if you use that special ability, that hero goes to the bottom of the pile. And of course, it's going to cost you resources to hire the heroes. So it's essentially a resource collection, and you're collecting your different types of Vikings to get a boat, to send them out on raids, of course, to get victory points. And that's it. It's a fairly light game. It's very theme light as well. The components are decent. They have little minis in them. The minis themselves aren't that great. And on the board, there's room to place all the minis. So you have a place for all the blue, red, and gray minis. That's it. Plays in 45 minutes to an hour. And it does give you a bit of a feel of a decent Euro game. That, again, I think it flew under the radar. People just weren't talking about it because this is around the same time that Blood Rage came out and the reprint of Fire and Axe came out that were much, much bigger, more thematic Viking games. And this one kind of went, I'm a Viking game too. And people, then you play it and you realize, it's probably not that much of a Viking game, but it is a pretty solid Euro game. And one that, you're always looking for those middleweight Euro games that play in about an hour. Dean and I were just talking before the podcast about something else, and we were saying it's hard to find games that are around an hour. You either find light filler games, 15, 20 minutes, or you get the heavier Euro games, an hour and a half to 2 hours. Hard to find something that has a little substance to it that's about an hour. And that's what In the Name of Odin is. So that is my pick for my leftover, is In the Name of Odin.
Now, is this the game that Lela bought a second copy of?
No, that is Forge War that she bought a second copy of.
Okay, I was thinking it was a Viking game that she got 2 copies of.
I think Forge War is a Viking-esque game where you're making like swords and axes and stuff like that. Yep.
Yeah, I haven't played this one. I don't own this one either, but I do remember it kind of came out in that whole glut of Vikings. But for those people that are newer to the hobby, a few years ago, Vikings are the equivalent to roll and rights today. Everything was Vikings.
Yeah, very true.
All right, well, that's it. That's our leftover, short and sweet, to the point. Check them out if you're interested. If you need a social deduction game or you want to try something different. I don't know how widely distributed Mayday was in the U.S. Looking on BGG, there's only 3 copies available. They're all out of Europe. But I know in the Name of Odin certainly was available here.
Yeah, it was published by NSKN Games.
All right. Well, very good. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right. Well, until next time, everybody, play some games and take care of yourselves and your loved ones.
See ya.